Yesterday, I met a therapist from the US. It was quite an interesting conversation. And she said, if you ask me who the first therapist was, I would say the Buddha. Samsara is Dukkha. Nirvana is Shanti. He laid out the path, which is everyone's experience. But he said, they are not two. Samsara is Dukkha. Nirvana is Shanti. And they are not two. Which means this Shanti, this peace, is to be found through life and living, not escaping from it. So simple. Avoidance is not the answer. If you run away and go to a cave, a whole new set of problems may beset you, which you didn't have here. Nisargadatta Maharaj himself ran away and met someone who said, please go back. What are you doing? And through means, through what? Through relationships. Peace of mind through relationships. With others, with myself, and with what happens in my life. So simple. Today is Christmas Eve, and I rejoiced in one coincidence which I recently discovered. You see, the teachings of Jesus, I got an understanding of them through Joel Goldsmith, because he was inspired by the Gospel of St. John. Even Eckhart Tolle quotes Jesus a lot, and I read A Course in Miracles. But one of the pivots of Goldsmith's teachings, based on Jesus's teachings, was resist not evil. Resist not evil. Now this book I'm reading by Arthur Osborne on Ramana Maharshi. I tell you, things come at the right time as a gift. First of all, before I speak about that, I met someone long back who said Bhagwan never used to cry. He was beyond the dualities of life and loss and pain. A jnani doesn't cry. Now, there was a disciple of his, Lakshmi Amal, who lost her husband, son, and daughter in quick succession, was distraught, and someone suggested she go and meet this young man. That is what took her to Ramana Maharshi. Could there be more grief than that? No. By and by, she settled down by serving him, being in his presence. She came to terms with what happened. And as life went by, she adopted a girl. And the girl grew up and had a son, whom she called Ramana. With all the grief she had passed through and the peace she had found, she was still mother enough to form a new attachment, and she adopted a daughter not without asking Bhagwan's permission. When the time came, she arranged her marriage and rejoiced at the birth of a grandson whom she named Ramana. And then one day, utterly unprepared, she received a telegram that her adopted daughter had died. The old grief broke upon her again. She rushed up the hill to Sri Bhagwan with the telegram. He read it with tears in his eyes. And, appeased but still sorrowful, she left for the funeral. She returned with the child Ramana and placed him in the arms of Sri Bhagwan. Once more, there were tears in his eyes as he held the child. And his compassion brought her peace. So you see this misconception some people have, that a guru becomes a zombie and completely cold and oblivious to emotion, is actually, this misconception is held very precious and dear to people who are on the path of Advaita. There's no such thing. In fact, sages are more human than human beings. They don't have filters like we do. They don't have barriers. What arises in the moment is what is honored. But we have built up this image of how they should be and should behave. They haven't said it. Non-resistance may seem impracticable in an established religion, since every country must have its law courts and police, and at least in modern conditions, its army. However, a religion has two levels of obligation. the minimum obligation upon all who follow it and upon countries where it is established, and the full obligation upon those who devote their lives to following the path laid down regarding all worldly advantages as nothing in search for blessedness. It is only in this second and higher sense that Bhagavan established a path, and therefore for himself and his followers he could say, resist not evil. You see, our focus goes straight to the word evil. It is the resistance first that has to be looked at. This phrase has to be understood, otherwise the ego is too quick. If someone harms me or does something to me, I must resist to save myself. Simple logic. But what has happened is, through the process of Maya, the grand illusion, we have assumed somebody as a power apart from God. So we resist. Resistance has become the norm. We resist someone who pushes our buttons. Because we consider the one who pushes our buttons as evil. Which means we have given independent authority to that person as doing an act independently, losing sight of the fact that that person is designed and conditioned by the same power that has designed and conditioned you in a different way. That person has been designed to push your buttons. You have been designed to push someone else's buttons. You see the joke? So this belief in good and evil is the primary polarity. And evil is that which threatens me, which threatens, forget my life, which threatens my beliefs, my views, my opinions. I consider evil and I resist it. The sage knows that anyone's view is as valid as his own. He may not agree with it. That's a different matter. But surely the other person is entitled to their point of view based on their filters, their conditioning, their nature. Who am I to take away someone's point of view? It's absurd. So resistance starts dropping. Resistance to life starts dropping. The prayer, Holy Spirit, thou who makes me see everything. Holy Spirit, thou who makes me see everything and shows me the way to realize my ideal. Holy Spirit is not the ego. Holy Spirit, thou who makes me see everything, means what? Means not seeing from my filtered and conditioned eyes, but from the eye of wisdom. You who give me the divine gift to forgive and forget the wrong that has been done to me. The divine gift. The ego does not forgive, you see. In this short dialogue with you, I want to thank you for everything. Everything. Pleasures and pains. Why? Because I've learned from both of them. Perhaps more from pain than pleasure. And confirm once more, I never want to be separated from you, no matter how great the material desires may be. I want to be with you and my loved ones in your perpetual glory. Perpetual glory, not something transient, passing, here today, gone tomorrow. So, resist not evil means actually I start perceiving less and less as evil in my life. As life goes by, each day passes, I meet new people. I'm carrying the baggage of old Rinadubandhans, of relationships which have always been stressful for me. That is life for everyone. But when I offer less resistance to the past, to the present, and the future, I start rising above the pairs of opposites. When I accept that in my life, There will be people I get along with and some I may not get along with. When I just accept this, I find I am able to manage my relationships with people better, and I don't take away other people's peace of mind just because I don't agree with them. We do that. We try and make people feel guilty and ashamed of saying and doing things. If I am hurt, I will hurt you back. That is my law. It's amazing how the ego operates in darkness. The darkness of the ego is this, that it's playing out its patterns from childhood. And then it asks, why am I repeating patterns? Because they will keep repeating till the lesson is learnt. Try it once with that old relationship where someone upsets you and that person comes before you tomorrow. Just wish that person peace. Within yourself only you can wish. In your own mind, you can say, I know you're facing your own challenges, your own issues, and I wish you peace. That is a pattern breaker. Because what happens is the spotlight turns from this me who is the victim now back out. This obsession with the me is now reversed. And even in that situation where I would have become like crumpled paper, put it back out. I wish you well. I wish you peace. Then this obsession with protecting me and my story starts dissolving. This is the entry into the kingdom of heaven. When the ego relinquishes its position, what happens is that it starts abiding more and more in being, the light of being. What does relinquishing its position mean? I may still have a view about something. It doesn't mean I give that view up, but I give up my identification with that view, which tends to make me fight with people and disturbs their peace and my peace. And it does not allow me to see other perspectives with an open mind, to think about it. Is this person, is there some merit in what they are saying? Can I be open enough to just explore that? So these subtle changes start happening. I may still feel that my view is the right view as far as I am concerned, but I don't proclaim it as the truth like I used to. Earlier, I thought it was the truth. It was the only view possible. Now, I know it's not. You're deceiving yourself. The ego is full of deceit and deception. It's a trickster. It wants you to feel good. And this path, the path of knowledge, destroys these illusions, these precious beliefs, identifications, and illusions. That is why Maharaj said, be careful, because it can burn your entire house down. But the gift is a treasure house of Sukha Shanti. Thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Means you don't have to look at God all the time to be in peace. But if you see the hand of God behind everyone you meet and any event that comes to you unasked, that means your mind is stayed on thee, which means you will be kept in perfect peace. If every time, every day, something happens, good or bad, the awareness is there. This could have only happened if it was the will of God. Obviously, it happened unasked. Certainly not my will. Anyone I meet, the person who abuses me and the person who loves me, both are aspects of the same God. It means my mind is stayed on thee. It's really quite simple. When you look at it in this way, it's really quite simple. And then by and by, I find that I'm a light being floating through the journey of life. I no longer am wired up and stressful, anxious, depressed. Like this therapist told me, I said, "What's your specialty?" She said, "Trauma." And I said, "Can I be honest and ask something?" She said, "Of course." I said, "According to my understanding, we are all traumatized. By birth itself, we are traumatized." She said, "You're absolutely right, 100%. But of course, they have to specialize in specific cases and studies, so that's what they do. Because why traumatized? I mean, Siddharameshwar Maharaj didn't mince his words. He said, you're brewing in a hellhole for 9 months before you come into this plane. But something that was so vast got squeezed and brought down into this plane with a set of conditioning, nature, genetics, through which that had to operate and navigate its way through life. But at the same time, man has been given a gift. The only species on the planet is the human species, which is aware that it is aware. It is the only species to have this precious gift. I am aware that I am aware. So then one either lives a life of unawareness or a life of awareness. Based on one's destiny. And some people are drawn to some path, some spiritual path. Could be anything. Bhakti yoga, Kriya yoga, Kundalini yoga, Jnana yoga. Because in them, consciousness has kindled a journey. The journey through the haze and mist of daily living to the light, one could say. And this has been going on for centuries. There have been spiritual masters who have always come onto this plane. And people have been together with them. That is the grace of the divine, you could call it. Mostly they have been abused in their lifetime, like Jesus was. And crucified. Or like Akhenaten, the pharaoh Akhenaten. I was quite convinced that if from childhood he was staring at the sun, and the guards would find him in a trance, it would be logical to conclude he was going into samadhi. And as a young boy, and then when his destiny was that someone weak and timid like him, hardly any personality to look at, was appointed pharaoh because his brother died suddenly. The brother who was the opposite, charismatic, powerful, strong, died. And the boy said only the sun will be worshipped henceforth. The giver of life, that sun which does not distinguish on whom to shower its rays. And in his love for the people, and in his wish that they come out of the clutches of the temple priests, he started destroying the temples to the other gods and building temples to the sun. The obvious was bound to happen. And eventually, he too was put in prison. And some accounts say he was assassinated, others say he was tortured till he died a miserable death. But then I read something that in the esoteric texts, Akhenaten had started a school, a mystery school called the Law of One. And it seems that he bestowed enlightenment on 300 students, mostly women. This part has disappeared from the history books. And when the mother of Pondicherry was asked about Akhenaten, she said he was no fool. He knew what would happen, but the work had to be done on the mental plane. It had to be recorded in consciousness that this attempt was made. Which he called the Law of One. So as far as we are concerned, the day we find that our love is an equal love and not a polaric love, that I really feel the same by and by with people I meet, or with my cousins, maybe set of cousins, family members. I no longer now segregate them into, I love this set, I want to be away from that set. Or with friends. I know I may have my preferences. I'm built that way. I have certain preferences, I honor those preferences. But this kind of compartmentalization is now not operating. Then I know that this love of mine is the love of acceptance of people for who they are, the love of things the way they are, whether I like it or not. I still accept it now. This love is the love of acceptance. This is the love which someone like Ramana Maharshi, he was just on his couch and the whole world was at his feet. All his disciples would live with him in that one room initially, because it was the love of one. So when we find by and by that our life is now going in this direction, then we know we've touched upon that peace. That peace, be still. Because the gift of peace is being still. The mind is not swinging like it used to now. Now it's becoming calmer and calmer and calmer. That is the peace, be still. And in that stillness, I start meeting people in my life. I start meeting the one who upsets me and the one who loves me. The stillness is the same. Then we find, as Siddharameshwar Maharaj says, he says we are all babbling in illusion. And then we find in our own life this babbling has become less. Either external babbling going on, or the mind's babble. We find that babbling is not happening like it used to. And which means the mind is at peace. Some call it samadhi. Which means when the mind is at peace, I am more and more witnessing the flow of life. Witnessing. That is the gift of the teaching. Witnessing. Witness consciousness. Anyone would like to share anything? It's for the recording. You're busy with your son's marriage preparations?
In 2 days, functions are starting.
Wow.
Had to come today. From last talk, this whole month I could pull through. It's all scripted. It's all destined. Every moment, as soon as the chatter starts, the bubble just breaks with the thought that it's all destined. It has helped me through dealing with so many vendors and so many things. Wedding is in Jaipur. So many things are happening. Couple vendors are really pushing buttons. And one of them is tailor. The bridal clothes, my daughter's clothes, not coming out good at all. So last night, I wrote so many messages to him. And you said so many things today that I feel like erasing everything.
But too late.
From the chat. He's on vacation, so I hope he did not read them.
You deleted them from the chat.
No, I have not. I listened to you, so now I feel like deleting them from the chat. But at the same,
you let loose your missiles. Now it's too late to call them back.
So, because you had said that certain things, certain actions, they have to be taken.
Sure.
For things to happen. And if it would be just my regular dress and he didn't do well, I would say, okay, that's the way it was supposed to happen. But functions are coming, they are supposed to happen. So it has to come out certain way only. So that message had to be, so even when I was typing or writing down all these things, I knew, Gautam, this script message constantly in my mind that it's all scripted. But when you are telling me right now that he could not have done anything different, that is making me think very differently now. That because I feel that he did not take right action or he did not pay attention or whatever, but he could not have done anything different.
Yes, and more importantly, he did what he thought and he felt he should do as far as his output is concerned. The main point here is, are these messages targeted at an individual or are they conveying a response?
It was conveying the response
from you about the situation at hand. You see, there's a difference here. Yeah, because when my messages are blaming and accusing someone, they have a certain tone. But when I am sticking to the facts of the case, realizing that in this instance, we are not on the same wavelength, my words come out differently. The other person doesn't feel that he is being offended or assaulted.
No, that is not how it has gone. It has gone as a more like complain. Okay, how can I, or what to do now?
Yeah,
how
so
can we handle?
Nice if it has gone that.
Yeah. But
the situation is still there for you to deal with.
Yeah. So that is the reason the message had to go, because I have to get some actions from him now. Whatever has happened, how can it be corrected in just 1 or 2 days? So I remember I have 2 things. Eckhart Tolle had mentioned once that next door where he was living, there was one very unhappy woman, and she had so many complaints and all that. One day she came to him and she started just talking and blabbering and whatnot. And he was so aligned that just in 5 minutes, everything calmed down. So my reason of coming here to you is that my chatter would stop. I would again come back to my alignment. Even the thought of it brings so much happiness and so much, excitement. But I have to live through it. I have to live through the life.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what happens if my daughter-in-law's dress does not turn out perfect? Pain will arise.
It's not perfect. It's not good at
Nowhere
all.
near perfect. Pain will arise. But I will know I tried my best.
Yeah, that is it. That is what
I
it is.
tried my best. I tried my best to speak to this vendor. I used all my intelligence, chose one vendor out of the lot. But for some reason, which only God knows, it didn't turn out the way it should have. So what happens is a regret may arise that my wish was to give her the best possible dress, but it wasn't meant to be. So regret may arise, but no guilt or shame for myself because I tried my best. No hatred and condemnation for the vendor. He is also an instrument of God. So I find that I'm now dealing with just the pain in the moment, which was that the dress was not anywhere what I had envisioned. That is it. The story around the dress, all the hatred, malice, guilt, shame, condemnation for the other and myself is gone.
So I have become quite conscious of all these things. I don't even talk to anyone. I just keep it because I don't want to create that animosity or that kind of negative vibe around in the world. I just want to keep it to myself and deal one-on-one only. So my talking to people about any of these situations in life have minimized so much. So my another question was, before listened to you maybe a year back and then started listening to Ramesh's talks over and over again, I used to read or listen to Louis Hay and the other one, the creator of the secret thing, not Rhonda Byron,
I don't know the name.
Oh, okay.
Do you know?
No. Okay. So they say that you invite things or events in your life by your vibrations or by your thinking or by your... So because they strongly believe in you create your own reality. So I was so much on that, and that is what brought me to the alignment that mind your own business. So I stopped complaining and most of the time in peace. So this, whatever I'm doing right now with you guys, I mean, listening to you all, is the next level to it. But my question is, whatever is happening right now in my life, have I invited those things by thinking or by being frustrated or by being anxious? Or so is that a sub-law of the main law that everything is destined, but you invite things with your vibes?
See, firstly, please don't try to cross-pollinate two different teachings and concepts because it creates confusion. No one is wrong. No one is right. No one is wrong. Because they are addressing an issue in a specific way. But can you tell me, did you invite into your life a vendor who didn't make the dress properly?
No.
It happened.
It happened.
So simple. It happened. Now, all the trouble around the dress, now I can see, do I go into all that mess, all this thing, this churn, or I let it be?
Let it be is so peaceful. When I think about just let it be,
Yes.
is more peaceful. Then find solution is more peaceful.
No, but it will happen that way. The teaching delivers you this annihilation of the thinking mind. So you're dealing with the situation at hand. So besides the dress, who else has pushed your buttons?
Decorator. It's in Jaipur, right? Wedding is in Jaipur. And the decorator and so many vendors are in Jaipur. Their working style is different than Bombay people. And we are coming from, like, we live in US. So we are coming from that.
Of course, that perfection, that commitment, absolutely.
Yeah, and customer is always right. That is the main thing of.
And here they don't care.
Yeah.
Because they have far richer customers than you. But this is the testing ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the testing ground.
Do you think I would come? I mean, in normal circumstances, how many things are happening at home right now? Do you think I would come here because I needed to be with you? I really need it.
But the realization is that this is daily living. This is the testing ground.
Yes.
This is, you see, as Vimlananda said, there's no point announcing an exam 2 months before where the child can prepare, because life is full of surprises. Then you know where the person stands. When these things start being thrown at you and how you react to them, then you know for yourself, where do I stand in relation to this?
Yeah. So my son and daughter-in-law, they are arriving from US. And last night he called that his flight got cancelled. So one after the other, many things are happening. So I knew that I had to see you today.
Yeah, and so what happened then with his flight got cancelled? He's booked on to the next flight?
Yeah, I mean, of course he had to pay triple the price one way, but we have no choice. But that's okay. It had to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, it had to happen.
Yeah.
And I can just keep counting my blessings that we could buy that ticket.
Sure, that's the right way to look at it.
Yeah. Life is beautiful. Just the way
It was
is.
destined for money to go out from your hands.
Absolutely.
How it went is irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
The destiny was it had to go. To whom and how is no longer that relevant anymore.
Yeah.
A cancelled flight had to happen.
Yeah.
As per the divine will. Amazing.
Yeah.
Because when our flights go on time, we don't say thank you, God. The problem is when it is cancelled. Because we feel it is our right. That flights must take off is our birthright. It's amazing, isn't it? Absurd. But when the problems happen, then all these questions come up.
And this is the most crucial time, right? During Christmas,
Yes.
everyone travels.
Yeah.
So to find a flight is also so
Can
difficult.
imagine.
Yeah.
It's very stressful for the whole family.
I think luckily my son, without listening to you guys, he is what you teach.
So then he is able to handle.
very
So you
nice.
tell him the dress didn't turn out well, please handle the situation.
No, that's daughter-in-law.
I know, but you can tell your son.
Okay, handle her.
Yeah.
Can I share something?
Sure.
It's very interesting. I work in the movie industry,
Okay.
and with the kind of problems you're having on a wedding, you should come and see a film set sometime. We have 10 different departments, all working with a couple of assistants, trying to find equilibrium in a given period of time, and having to have the right weather with the right sun
I know.
shining through the same time in a short window of time with over 1 crore of rupees per day as investment.
Yeah.
And everything has to be right. And I worked as a chief AD for a time. Chief AD's job is to find that equilibrium. And when I struggled with the problem that you're struggling with, one thing that really helped me was constant questioning that what is my motivation? Either towards screaming at someone, or towards talking with love, or towards, bringing them together. I constantly question myself, what is my motivation? Because if my motivation is to get things done, then I would handle it very differently. I can't take anything personally then.
Yeah.
This is my job. I'm being paid for it. If my motivation is to... Because at the end of the day, your motivation is very simple, is to get things done with whatever's being thrown at you.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing is, I'm finding more and more who I am as my conditioning and whatnot. I am a control freak person. So learning to let loose also so I realize that all these things are happening for my betterment only. And because I see the things in me becoming more aware, and I feel that someone is watching over me, not just for just happy events to happen, but for my further growth. So I see that the intention is not, his intention is not bad at all. I know that. Yeah.
That is why it says all that God made was good.
Yeah. And then I remember that thing, that the things that would happen the way you want is good. But if it did not, it's even better, because then it's his wish. But when something so big is happening, that's okay. No complaint. Thank you.
No, I can understand, because as the mother of the groom, you must be highly stressed. It's understandable. But
I don't want to lose my alignment. That's all I want from you.
that's the problem.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Should not I be aligned?
It is very simple. There are only two things here. One is the total acceptance of the will of God. And two, that nobody is the doer of their actions, including myself. These two means you are in alignment. In his case, he will try his best. He's being paid for it, as he said. But he knows that sometimes I won't get the desired outcome. So when we realize, I'll read this to you. Maybe this will give you some solace. I opened it on that page. Bhagwan said explicitly, all the actions that the body is to perform are already decided upon at the time it comes into existence. The only freedom you have is whether or not to identify yourself with the body. Then Arthur Osborne continues, if one acts a part in a play, the whole part is written out beforehand, and one acts as faithfully, whether one is Caesar who is stabbed or Brutus who stabs, being unaffected by it because one knows one is not that person. So you have to rest in the knowing that all the vendors, this marriage, the program, the events will go precisely the way it is meant to. All I can do is try my best in this situation. I cannot control it beyond that. So don't try to control your alignment either. You're made a certain way. So what happens if you lose your alignment? So be it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Who's going to judge you?
I know, right? And if they judge, they judge.
That is their problem.
Yeah.
To judge you, they are judging God.
Yes. So ego has not gone as much. I know that. I'm working on it. Thank you.
What you said about meeting people and not forcing your point of view upon them, I experienced a little bit of that a couple of years earlier, which was my beginning of this beautiful experience. And one thing that was a byproduct of this was when I was not focused on the points of views while sitting with someone, I could finally meet people for the first time.
So it happened as a certain experience?
It started as a certain experience, yes, sir. And it just started as an experience where I felt an immense amount of love within myself. And that slowly churned out who I thought I was to just this presence is love. And from that, then when I was meeting people and talking to them, instead of focusing on like what the point of view and whatever is, I just started feeling their presence as a person. And and then I saw a lot of what I wouldn't otherwise see in that person, where they are in life, and what they're coming with and what they're holding on to, and a lot of all these aspects around the personality per se. And then the first thing that happened was, the moment I realized this, I really wanted to meet my parents, because I thought I'm really going to now meet them for the first time. So the first thing I did was I went back. My parents are in Jalandhar, that's where I'm from, in Punjab. So I went back home, and it was very interesting. It was the beginning of winters, and I went and met my parents. And instead of my parents, who I ended up meeting, instead of my mother, I for the first time saw her as a 65-year-old woman, with a set of problems and a set of things that make her happy. And, I really just met a girl. And the first thing I could see was the kind of childhood she's had. And then I saw my Nana and Nani in her. Like, I was like, this is where she's getting this from. This is where she's getting this from. And then I saw my dad, and I saw this. I had so many problems with my dad while I was growing up. He was such an angry parent. And then I saw him, and I saw this beautiful little boy who was not loved the way he maybe expected to be loved, I feel. There were like 5 siblings, and my grandfather was in the Air Force, and, I feel like he was somewhere in the middle, and he didn't get that kind of attention that he should have, whatever. But I had the experience of, and I met a 68-year-old man. And I saw the life that he's seen, that I as a son could have never seen until I was the son. I never met my father as a person. The moment the sun dropped, I finally met him. At the age of 32, I met my father for the first time.
Very well said.
And since then, this is my first promise to myself. Every time I meet someone, I will really meet them. One, because that's again something that I realized. This is such a beautiful twist of destiny, that you get to meet someone. It's a beautiful thing. If you really know how to meet someone, it's a gift every time you meet someone. it's a present. It's like, it's this beautiful combination of, sorrows and past, and, like where they are right now, and the conversation, what they choose to talk about when you meet them. And the same thing, the more I took myself out of the conversation and my own points of views, I felt people who have known for years started talking completely different things with me. I allowed them space to talk about stuff that they could not talk about with anyone else. And these conversations started becoming more and more intimate. And hence healing, and for both of us.
Yes.
And educational for me. So
You see, because when we don't see through our filters, we are totally present. What the other is sensing is that we are present for them. Because they, in a way, sense they are no longer talking to a person with personhood. Let's take it to an extreme. Pure presence. Imagine you are a murti or deity in a church or temple. Imagine you are that. And you see people coming at you, looking and worshipping you like that. As pure presence, what would you see? Now the personhood has gone. You are a deity. People are coming with their hopes, fears, aspirations, love, whatever you call it, bowing down at you. What you would feel is that these people, the first step of thought will be they are looking at God, the deity. But the next step is you feel that they are looking at themselves. Because the mirror is clean. They are looking into a clean mirror. And when you look into a clean and clear mirror, you don't hesitate. If that transparency, openness, clarity is what is maintained as being, and whoever comes in front of that is honored, then it is consciousness looking at consciousness, which is called non-dual devotion. When you have the firm conviction that they are not looking at me as an individual but as consciousness, and I am not looking at them as individuals but as consciousness, then that is the field of pure being. It's fascinating, as you say. That field, because in your case you were able to suspend the filters when you looked at your parents and you went and felt as if you were looking at them for the first time, that happened because your filters, which were so hardwired, had an opportunity to fade into the background.
The memory.
And then you feel that if a person is a certain way, you know how that is. You feel it yourself. You feel if a person is an aggressor, that I also know what it is to be an aggressor because I'm part of that. If there's a timid person, you feel the timidness. You're part of that. You feel everything.
From a place like that comes the observation that no one is the doer of their actions. It's very evidently, simply clear that we're all just dancing a dance that we don't even know we're dancing.
We are being danced. Amazing. Amazing. What a life. You know, you just start at the end of the day laughing. This also happened, you start laughing. That also happened, you start laughing. It's amazing.
Everything gets solved when you think of it that yes, nothing to worry.
Yeah.
You're completely light.
Yeah. You're completely light and therefore you are completely light with an L caps. It's amazing. And that is why this resist not evil, you see, because that whole incident which Arthur Osborne has elaborated on, the famous incident where the thieves came and broke into the ashram and stole all the utensils and all that. And one or two disciples of Bhagwan went to get sticks to hit back, and he said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Bhagwan, I mean, we are protecting you and the property. Isn't that right?" He said, "No. They are doing their dharma. Is this your dharma? You are with me. We are following a certain path. Is this your nature?" So then, with this understanding, we really become light. We don't want to be like others. We don't want others to become like us. That need drops away. To want others to be a certain way is a form of violence. If you want someone you don't like to be a certain way, you are the one who's violent. Everything is the opposite of what it is. That is the grand illusion. Do you know, if a tree is chopped in a forest, there's a loud sound. Correct? That's an illusion. There's no sound when a tree is chopped. Because the human ear is constructed a certain way, it interprets certain sound waves as sound. But otherwise, it is all silent. It is a silent show. That is the illusion. We are operating through limited senses, based on which we are passing judgment.
So every sound is silent? Whatever
Yes.
you are saying is silent?
There is no sound. Firstly, let's take this in another direction. Did you come here into this room, or did this room come into you?
With my limiting thinking, I came to the room.
Right? But if we just look at this, before you came here, you were at home.
Yes.
You could see certain things, your room, whatever, the people. Now, it changed. Earlier, that was in your consciousness. Now, I am in your consciousness. Earlier, there were elements in your consciousness. Right? Now, there are new elements which have replaced those elements. It is your consciousness.
But that is when we think. But this is physically we have come.
Yes, but I am asking you to reflect on that.
Yeah.
The content of your consciousness now is this room and me and they.
It is.
Earlier, the content was something else. So, who has gone where? It is only the content of your consciousness that has changed.
Yeah. So, you are going to the consciousness level. Yes.
And why do we go for satsang? Why do we go to temples? Because we are connecting with, one could say, the divine. We are bringing that into our field of consciousness. That is what is happening. It is all within us. It appears to be external. It appears like that. But whatever the aspirations of the soul or Atma or whatever you call it, it is bringing that into the field of consciousness. What it treasures. So let's say I treasure material objects a lot. I will buy my watches, I'll buy my shirts. That is all coming into my field of consciousness. Then for some people, something says, hey, there's no end to this. How long am I going to be mired in materiality? Something clicks, a new dimension opens up, then it wants more of that. So maybe it's watching videos on YouTube, it's meeting teachers, it's going to sacred places, because the content of consciousness has now undergone a shift. It is trying to move away from that which is transient to something which is more stable. So it is the content of one's consciousness which is actually undergoing a transformation. That is what is happening. So I'm no longer identified with objects and people which take me out. It is now a reversal and bringing me back in, so to speak. Resting in being. That is what is happening. Why did you feel the need to come here? Because you wanted to rest in being.
True.
Because all this is going on. Which pitch is going on now? Stressful situation. I just want that.
Absolutely.
Because now the soul knows. Or forget the word soul if it's too abstract. The ego knows that there's no end to this tamasha. How many children do you have? Two. Imagine if you had six weddings to deal with.
I know, right?
6 dressmakers to deal with. So there's no end. There's no end to it.
So, I think you already answered that question when you read the last lines, but maybe if we can get a bit more elaboration on that. So the question is like, this person, whenever it wants to do something and it gets to do it, it thinks it is out of its free will.
Yes.
But we know that it is eventually out of its conditioning, that it thought in a certain way and it acted in a certain way. Right. So the question then is whether this person has any free will at all.
So that is your question.
That is the question. Again, it's not something which I'll lose sleep over. It's more out of curiosity, because I understand even this question belongs to the person.
No, it is a very simple answer. We do have free will as a mechanism of daily living. Because we have to operate, right? You have to decide, do I go to this restaurant or that restaurant? Do I wear this shirt today or that shirt today? That is free will. But the man of understanding now knows that my free will is based on only 2 things. My genes, my genetics, the way I've come into this being with genetics, my conditioning, which makes me prefer one thing over the other. So the man of understanding realizes that my free will is not as precious as I thought it was. Why? Because it's based on factors beyond my control. And 2, it does not guarantee the outcome. So the man of understanding knows this. So he does not put free will on a pedestal like a normal person does. So what happens? For the man of understanding, when the outcome is something else, he is not frustrated. He knows that the design of life is such, it may deliver another result. More importantly, he knows all he could do is make a decision. Whether it turns out this way or that way, we don't know. So he's no longer ashamed, guilty, or proud and arrogant. He won't say, oh, I took the right decision. I'm so great. That does not happen. And nor does the opposite happen. So he knows he has to utilize free will because this is a dualistic world. Decisions have to be taken. Free will has to be exercised. But at the back, he knows that ultimately God's will prevails. So he has no problem with the concept of free will. He will not be trying to convince others that there is free will or no free will. He has understood how it works. Which is why Jesus said, not my will, O Lord, but thine be done. Same thing. So he acts as if he has free will, knowing he doesn't.
Can I just take it?
What is your name? I forget.
Jimmy.
Jimmy, yes, Jimmy.
Uh,
Did your sister come in the Pune?
So, we often find that when you do the right thing or press the right buttons, what you think is right, you generally tend to get the right result. Of course, the opposite result could come. You do the right thing and the wrong thing can happen, except. Is this a tendency for the right thing to happen when you do the right thing, the wrong thing to happen if you do the wrong things, generally, a phenomenon in this dualistic world? And when you think of the absolute spirit, nothing is happening. And so I'm not trying to not use the word cause and effect or law of karma or whatever, trying not to use that. But in that realm, there is no law of karma or no cause and effect. Am I right? Have I understood this correctly?
You could say that in the absolute sense, but all action has a reaction. Cause and effect, action, reaction are the framework of duality. Obviously, in the absolute, there's no such thing, but the wheel of time and karma keeps moving. And that is based on cause and effect and action and reaction.
So that we are these actors in this show is actually preordained. In that sense, we don't have a free will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yet we have to act as if, because we have to use our intellect in a situation and decide certain things. So we have to act as if we have, because we cannot be absolved of that, because in the absolute it does not exist.
So you don't become lazy.
Lazy, or through misconceptions, what tends to happen is we can harm others. Then the understanding comes. If you truly had the understanding that all there is consciousness, would consciousness harm itself? So one could call that enlightened living or right action, which is what the Bhagavad Gita is about also. Yet, Krishna does not hesitate to tell Arjuna, please pick up your bow and fight. Because Krishna needs a certain outcome. And he tells Arjuna, all your life you have been trained for this one point where you've decided to put the bow and arrow down. So one has to function, and what Krishna is trying to say here is that function according to your swabhava, your nature. We are trying to become other than what we are. It's amazing.
Yes.
But in the absolute, or like in our deep sleep, it's all irrelevant. Yet we wake up every morning and we have a role to play. Amazing. But that's the right thing you said. One is more light. One is really becoming lighter and lighter and lighter.
So you're stopping seeing yourself too seriously and life too seriously.
Yeah.
Just let it be.
And others. Don't take others seriously, especially those who push your buttons.
I have a question.
Sheetal, will you sing for us that song after this? That one which I really like. हाँ, शब्दों के जंगल में. Yeah. And there's a Christmas cake which we are going to have after this satsang. So do stay back and take some of it. I'll come back after 10 minutes or so to join you. Yeah.
Yeah, so this thing about resist no evil, in some sense, that's choosing what's a part of your consciousness, right? Because say if some bad action happens, you don't want that to be in the field of consciousness because in the field of your consciousness, because that's not the divine, in some sense.
How would you say that?
Because it's disconnecting you from the divine in some sense, because it's bringing up all the other stuff, judgment, hate, condemnation, blame, all that.
Right.
So isn't it better to be prudent and choose in that situation many times, whether you want that to be a part of your life or not? So then the resistance is valid, right?
Would you call it resistance?
Well, it's not resistance, it's more like choosing, I guess.
No, so there is a difference. Because if you have labeled something as evil, there will be resistance. So I think we have to backtrack as far as your question is concerned. Because if you saw this as a person playing out their script, their blueprint, the way God made it, then your approach to the person, your response to the person will have a different quality to it. It will not be that obviously I don't want it, so I have to resist it in order to keep it out. It is not so.
But say if it's like a bad vibration and you feel the heaviness and all that, you can fine, be with it.
No, you don't have to force yourself to be with it. But when you accept that this is a part of everything, the way you deal with it is very different. You may still want to move away from it. There's no problem with that. No one is saying keep that vibration constantly in your field. But have you understood it?
I got it. But so that is not resisting it at all?
No.
Because you are moving away from it.
No, resistance is the pushback of the ego with its sense of doership. If you have blamed and condemned the other for doing that action, there's resistance. If the sense of doership has been understood and it has been accepted that nobody is the doer of the actions, I would not call that resistance. I would call it using one's buddhi and not as a knee-jerk reaction, and using one's intellect to figure out that from this point on what, without wishing harm on the other. So the whole quality changes. I would not call that resistance.
It's like you learn in karate that if you have to, if somebody is attacking you, the first thing you do is try to move away.
Right.
You can keep him in 1 minute.
Right.
You know, if you have the choice to move away.
Yeah.
You're not a coward. No. If that guy doesn't still pursues you, then you just want to do that's it.
Right.
You do the minimum. Nothing more.
That's really beautiful. Being a minimalist.
Yes.
I love it.
But there is some sense of resistance in that also, right? Because you are kind of like choosing, and in some sense, there is a subtle aspect
It depends, because if you feel you are the doer in that, then there is resistance.
If you don't feel you're the doer, that is right. Makes sense.
But long and short is, as Goldsmith says, yours, if it becomes a peace, be still to the errors of the world.
Say it again.
Your consciousness, your nature becomes a peace, be still to the errors of the world. Then he uses the example of the storm, where Jesus didn't try to wish away the storm or chant some mantras for this. He just said, be still. So what happens is, what I perceive as errors of the world, when I realize they are based on my conditioning, my filters, I've labeled something as an error. So the error is not really an error.
Yeah.
And yours becomes a peace, be still to the supposed errors of the world. Then you find the whole dimension of relationships changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Everyone, this is Sheetal, and he's I've known him for a very long time. And he's very fond of Kabir.
Wow.
And he's a great soul, great singer. He travels the world as a spiritual pilgrim. And we have been very fortunate that he has sung for us a song every now and then in satsangs. So he lives in Pune sometimes in the south. I don't know where he lives. But he's a nomad in that sense, but his voice is very moving. And this particular song, when I heard it, when Sheetal sang it, really moved me. So I requested him to sing it again.
Very kind. Thank you. And it's such a joy to be back in this house. It's been many years. Do you want me to explain the song a bit?
Yeah.
Okay. The song is very interesting, and I mean no offense, but the words from this song simply says, sometimes we get lost in a web of words when the truth is very simple. And it's very interesting where it says that ultimately, if you just look at, I think, the law of one, or the love of one, everything comes from oneness, lives in oneness, goes back into oneness, just like the waves of an ocean come from the ocean, stay, play, and dissolve right back in. So why do we keep getting lost when the truth is so simple? And just basically that's the premise. And I'm guessing most of us are Hindi speakers, so we will get it. शब्दों के जंगल में तू क्यों फंसा है रे शब्दों के जंगल में तू क्यों फंसा है रे परब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा परब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा शब्दों के जंगल में तू क्यों फंसा है परब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा परब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा है। आनंद तू ही परमानंद तू ही, आनंद तू ही परमानंद तू ही, आनंद तू ही परमानंद तू ही, आनंद तू ही परमानंद तू ही। ओम में खोकर ओम में रम कर, ओम में मिलना है। शब्दों के जंगल में तू क्यों फंसा है रे? हर ब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा है रे। हर ब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा है। मान अपमान होता कहाँ रे? ये तो है शब्दों की पकड़। मान अपमान होता कहाँ रे? ये तो है शब्दों की पकड़। भले बुरे शब्द तुझे हिला दे, इतना तू नहीं है कमजोर। भले बुरे शब्द तुझे हिला दे, इतना तू नहीं है कमजोर। ओम में खोकर ओम में रम कर, ओम में मिलना है। शब्दों के जंगल में तू क्यों फंसा है? हर ब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा है। हर ब्रह्म के रस से तेरा नस नस रमा है। शांति शांति शांति।
Fantastic. Super. Thank you. Thanks.